The Zathrian invasion came without warning, a series of brutal, metallic ships cutting through Earth's atmosphere as if the planet itself were a mere obstacle in their path. These were not the kind of invaders humanity had seen before in sci-fi movies or books. No, the Zathrians were an advanced species, relentless and efficient, their empires spanning light years of space. And Earth was nothing more than a speck they intended to erase for the sake of their expansion. Jason Mitchell had faced war before, but nothing could have prepared him for this. He wasn't one to panic, though. As a Navy SEAL, he'd seen horrors beyond imagination. But even in the face of these seemingly insurmountable odds, something about the calm before the storm felt different. Earth was about to be tested, and Jason was among the few selected to be the spearhead of resistance. He sat in the dimly lit command room, surrounded by the hum of computer screens and the soft voices of his team members discussing strategy. His dark eyes remained locked on the map of the world, tracking the alien ship's movements. They had dropped into Earth's atmosphere with surgical precision, targeting key cities for maximum destruction. New York, London, Tokyo, gone in a matter of hours. Their weapons were advanced, capable of rendering even the mightiest human defenses useless. What was left? Humanity's last stand. His squad, a mix of experienced SEALs and other elite military personnel, had been thrust into the chaos from the moment the invasion began. Each of them was highly trained, their individual skills honed through years of military service. But none of them were prepared for what they faced now. The alien soldiers, armed with plasma rifles and wearing nearly indestructible armor, made every engagement feel like a hopeless fight. "You're thinking about it too much, Blaze," Sergeant Daniels said, his gravelly voice pulling Jason from his thoughts. His nickname, Blaze, had stuck during one particularly fiery mission in the Middle East, where Jason had taken down a whole enemy unit in an inferno, earning both the nickname and a reputation for getting the job done. Now, though, his job had never been more personal. Jason gave Daniels a tight nod, taking a moment to scan the situation. The way they move, they're organized. They're not just mindless invaders. They have a strategy. They're testing us? Daniels raised an eyebrow. That's what I'm worried about. We don't have enough time to test theories. Jason didn't answer. He couldn't afford to. They were up against something far greater than any army they had ever faced. Still, the SEALs didn't give up, not without a fight. They were the backbone of every covert operation, every rescue mission, every impossible situation. The Zathrians would learn that too. The first contact with the Zathrians had been nothing short of catastrophic. Earth's military had thrown everything they had at the invaders: fighter jets, tanks, missiles. All of it was useless against the alien shields. For every blow humanity struck, the Zathrians struck back with greater force. Jason's squad was called in to take the fight to the ground, to cut through the ranks of alien soldiers and find any way to make a dent in their seemingly invincible forces. The first mission was a disaster. They infiltrated a small base on the outskirts of a destroyed city, hoping to gather intelligence. They found it. The Zathrians weren't just conquering Earth. They were harvesting it. They used advanced technology to drain the planet's resources, sucking the energy from both the land and the people. The moment Jason and his team attempted to breach the facility, they encountered the first true force of the invaders. The Zathrian soldiers were taller, stronger, and faster than anything Earth had faced before. Jason's team, armed with what little they could salvage, engaged in a brutal firefight. The alien weapons tore through the air, leaving burning scorch marks on the walls and leaving no room for escape. Jason moved like a shadow, his team in sync with him as they darted from cover to cover. But then, they heard it, the hum of something far bigger. A massive alien mech, towering above them, appeared from behind the facility. Its enormous weapons glowed with an unearthly energy, and Jason realized with a sinking feeling that this was not just an army. They were facing an entire war machine. The SEALs retreated, each man covering the other as they dashed back to their extraction point. But one of their own didn't make it. Private Jacobs, a rookie with a lot of promise, was struck down by a pulse of energy from the mech. He went down hard, his body crumpling in a flash of light. The loss hit hard. It always did. But this wasn't just any fight. They were up against something that didn't care who died. It was about survival, and survival alone. Back in the command center, Jason couldn't allow the grief to distract him. He stood at the front, watching the alien ships advance across the globe. The humans had no hope of winning a conventional war. But Jason had faced worse odds. He wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. "We need a new plan," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but behind it, there was a fire that burned hotter than any conflict he'd ever been in. "Exactly what I'm thinking," Daniels replied, slapping a map on the table. "The Zathrians are spreading like wildfire. We can't fight them head-on, but we can hit them where it hurts." Jason stared at the map, running the coordinates through his mind. His mind worked at lightning speed, crafting strategies and tactics as if he had already fought this war 1,000 times in his head. "We need to get closer to their tech. Find out how they're pulling this off." The plan was simple. Too simple, some might argue, but Jason wasn't in the mood for complexity. They had to infiltrate the heart of the alien operation, find out how their shields worked, and sabotage their core systems. The team didn't have much time. A few hours later, they found themselves deep inside enemy territory, sneaking into a hidden facility where the Zathrians had established a command center. The silence of the place was unnerving. The air hummed with strange technology, and the walls seemed to pulse with life, the alien tech alive in a way that no human creation could ever be. As they infiltrated the command center, the squad encountered the first truly intelligent being among the Zathrians. A commander who spoke through the comms, his voice cold and calculated. "You think you can stop us, humans? You are nothing compared to the might of the Zathrians." Jason didn't answer. Instead, he raised his rifle and signaled for his team to prepare. The real fight was just beginning. But this time, Jason would make sure the Zathrians understood one thing. Humanity would not go down without a fight. The Zathrian ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Sleek, dark, and pulsing with unnatural energy, they descended on Earth in perfect formation, their movements deliberate, calculating. In a matter of hours, the skies above major cities were darkened with the shadows of these alien vessels, and a sense of helplessness gripped the people below. Panic was inevitable. Military forces scrambled to respond, but every missile, every fighter jet sent into the sky was nothing more than an insect against a glass wall, futile and quickly destroyed. Jason Blaze, Mitchell stood among the chaos, his feet planted firmly on the ground, his mind racing. He had seen war before, real war, on the gritty streets of conflict zones, in the deserts, and in the jungles where life and death were separated by fractions of a second. But this was different. The enemy wasn't human. They weren't a rogue nation or a terrorist cell. These were invaders from another galaxy, armed with technology so far beyond anything on Earth that it made even the most advanced human weaponry look like child's play. A voice crackled through his earpiece, breaking his trance. "Blaze, we need a plan. What's the next move?" It was Daniels, his right-hand man, always steady in the face of danger. But even Daniels, with his years of combat experience, sounded rattled. Jason took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. "We hit them hard and fast. We don't have time for a prolonged fight. We need to find their weakness, whatever that is, and we need to do it now." His mind shifted gears as he processed the information. The Zathrian shields were impenetrable, their weapons devastating. Human tactics, tried and true for centuries, wouldn't work. But there had to be something, some small weakness that could be exploited. It was just a matter of finding it before it was too late. "Blaze, I don't like this," Sergeant Daniels said, voice tinged with a rare hint of doubt. "We're outgunned, outmatched. This isn't like anything we've faced before." Jason clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. "I know, but we've got one thing they don't. We're human. We're adaptable. We don't fight fair, we fight smart. Let's move out." They boarded the transport vehicles, ready to leave the relative safety of their base and plunge into the unknown. Every instinct told Jason that this mission wasn't just about survival. It was about taking a stand. He'd seen what happened when people lost their will to fight. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about showing Earth that humanity wasn't just going to roll over. Not today. Not ever. The mission took them deep into the heart of the alien-controlled territory, through streets that were now littered with the ruins of cities that had once been vibrant, alive. As they moved in, Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of the loss. The people, their families, their homes, gone in an instant. It only fueled the fire inside him. If they were going to die today, it wouldn't be in vain. He'd make sure of it. They encountered their first real skirmish within the hour. The Zathrians were swift, and their weaponry was unlike anything Jason had seen. Plasma rifles that fired with a deadly accuracy, and armor so thick that even the most advanced human rounds couldn't penetrate it. But despite the technological superiority, the aliens lacked one thing: unpredictability. That's where the SEALs had the upper hand. Jason led his squad through narrow alleys, using the urban environment to their advantage. They laid traps, picked off stragglers, and moved quickly. But for every alien they downed, another seemed to take its place, their reinforcements coming in waves. Time was running out. It was then that they encountered their first real surprise: a massive alien war machine, a towering mech-like creature that moved with a terrifying grace, its massive feet crushing anything in its path. It towered over the SEALs, its glowing eyes scanning the terrain as it searched for targets. "Fall back!" Jason barked, pulling his team into cover as the mech's weapons fired, sending a barrage of energy blasts that tore through the buildings around them. The squad scrambled, moving fast, but it was clear they were outmatched. The mech was relentless, its every movement a calculated threat. There was no escaping it unless they could disable it. Jason's mind worked fast, analyzing the situation. His team didn't have the firepower to take down the mech directly, but they had something just as important: their brains. Daniels, you and Sanchez flank it from the left. Try to hit those exhaust ports on its legs. We'll go in from the front and try to draw its fire. Keep moving. Don't stop. Move faster than it can think. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was the only chance they had. The team split, moving with precision and determination. Jason's team was used to working under pressure, and even in the face of impossible odds, they knew how to get things done. The battle was fierce. The alien machine fired relentlessly, its energy beams turning the buildings into dust as Jason and his team darted through the streets, never stopping, always moving. The air was thick with smoke, the ground trembling beneath their feet with each blast. But there was something else too, a growing understanding between the humans and the alien machine. The more they engaged, the more the Zathrians adapted to their tactics. It became clear the aliens were learning. Fast. As they neared their objective, Jason's heart raced. He could hear his pulse in his ears, the pounding of his blood like a drum. This was it, the moment that would either make or break them. He and his team reached the mech's core, and with a synchronized effort, they planted explosives at its weak points. "Get clear!" Jason shouted, diving behind cover as the charges went off. The explosion shook the ground, a massive shockwave radiating out from the point of impact. The mech's legs buckled, and it collapsed, crumbling into a pile of twisted metal and glowing wreckage. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the alien forces retaliated, sending a fresh wave of soldiers to converge on their position. Jason's team was already moving, ready for the next battle. They had won a victory, but the war was far from over. As the sun set, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield, Jason looked around at his team. Their faces were grim, but there was something else in their eyes too: resolve. They had fought back. They had shown the Zathrians that humans weren't going down without a fight. But as Jason watched the last of the enemy retreat, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The real war was just starting, and humanity was ready. The sky was on fire. Jason Mitchell stood at the edge of the cliff, his gaze locked on the distant horizon where the alien ships hovered, their massive forms eclipsing the sun. A storm of plasma and energy rained down on Earth, turning cities to rubble, leaving no time for grief or panic. Only the desperate race to survive. For the first time in his life, Jason felt small. The invaders from the stars, known as the Zathrians, had arrived without warning, and Earth was on the verge of collapse. Humanity, with all its might and technology, was outclassed in ways no one could have predicted. He didn't know what it was about this particular moment that made him feel like the weight of the world was crushing him. Perhaps it was the realization that no human military force, no fighter jets, no missiles, no high-tech weaponry, could touch the alien ships. Or maybe it was the look in his men's eyes. His squad, the ones who had followed him through countless operations, who trusted him with their lives. They were scared, and for good reason. No one was prepared for something like this. Blaze, Sergeant Daniels called, breaking through Jason's thoughts. We need to move. Now. Jason didn't respond at first. He just nodded. Daniels was right. There was no time for reflection. The Zathrians had already begun their ground assault, sending waves of heavily armored soldiers to mop up the resistance. But Jason wasn't a typical soldier. He wasn't someone who would just sit back and wait for orders. Not when everything they knew was on the line. He turned toward his squad, his eyes locking with each of them. Daniels, his second-in-command, a man who had been by his side for nearly a decade, a seasoned warrior. Sanchez, the sharpshooter, quick with a joke, but deadly when needed. And Rivera, the medic, always calm, always there when someone needed help. Together, they were the tip of humanity's spear in this war. But even they knew that they were out of their depth. Jason adjusted the strap of his rifle, feeling its weight against his chest, and checked the rest of his gear. It was instinct now, the way he moved, the way he planned. Even in the face of the impossible, he knew what had to be done. All right, listen up, Jason said, his voice steady despite the storm of chaos around them. We're going to move on the Zathrian stronghold. We need to disrupt their communications, stop their reinforcements from getting through. We hit hard, hit fast, and get out. Daniels nodded, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. You're sure about this? They're too powerful. What if? What if we lose? We lose, Daniels. Jason interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension. But we don't go down without a fight. And we don't leave this world for them to take. Now move out. The group set off, moving through the desolate, destroyed streets with practiced efficiency. They moved in silence, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the Zathrian assault. Jason's mind was focused, the thoughts racing through him faster than he could process them. This wasn't like any other mission. This wasn't just about taking down the enemy. This was about survival, human survival. As they neared their target, the tension in the air grew palpable. The further they went, the more alien the landscape became. The Zathrians had begun to terraform Earth in their image. Alien architecture rising from the wreckage of human civilization. The once familiar world Jason had fought to protect was now foreign, hostile, twisted. And then it happened. The first wave of enemy soldiers appeared from the shadows. Zathrians, tall and menacing, their bodies encased in shining black armor, their eyes glowing with an eerie green light. They were quick, efficient, and deadly. The first shots rang out, and all hell broke loose. The SEALs fired in tandem, taking out several of the Zathrians, but there were too many of them. Their armor absorbed the rounds with little more than a slight jolt. The aliens retaliated with overwhelming force, their energy weapons sending blasts of light that turned buildings into ash. Get to cover, Jason shouted, as the shockwaves from the explosions rattled his bones. They took cover behind the crumbling remains of a building, the sound of gunfire and explosions deafening. Jason's heart raced, but his mind remained sharp. This wasn't a battle for survival. It was a fight for humanity's very existence. They couldn't afford to lose this. Blaze, we need a way out. Sanchez shouted over the noise, his voice filled with panic. Jason's mind was already working, analyzing the situation. There was a narrow alley ahead, a way to flank the Zathrians. But they would need to get past the mech guarding the rear entrance. I've got a plan, Jason said, taking charge. Sanchez, Rivera, cover us. Daniels, you're with me. We're going around the left side. The team moved out, keeping low, their eyes scanning the chaos for any sign of weakness. The Zathrians were relentless, but Jason knew that they had something the aliens didn't: unpredictability. They were human, and humanity had survived against impossible odds before. They reached the flank, where they could see the giant mech, a towering figure made of black metal and glowing blue energy. It was positioned between them and their objective, its eyes scanning the area, waiting for any movement. This was it. They had to take it down. Jason and Daniels moved quickly, their weapons raised, ready to strike. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. He knew what they were about to do could end them, but there was no other choice. On three, Jason whispered. 1, 2, 3. They attacked in unison, Daniels firing at the mech's lower joints, while Jason aimed for its power core, hidden beneath its armor. The mech fired back, but Jason and Daniels were already moving, using the broken cityscape for cover. A well-placed grenade from Daniels sent the mech stumbling, and Jason saw his opportunity. Now! Jason shouted. With a single, precise shot, Jason hit the core. The explosion that followed shook the ground beneath them, and the mech crumpled to the ground, its systems fried. It was a victory, but only a small one. They moved forward, but the sound of the Zathrians regrouping was unmistakable. The battle was far from over. Jason looked at his team. They were battered, bruised, but alive. He could see the weariness in their eyes, but also something else, resolve. They had just taken down one of their enemy's biggest threats, but there was still so much to do. The Zathrians were regrouping, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. Let's finish this, Jason said, his voice full of determination. For humanity, and with that, they moved forward, ready to face the next wave, knowing that their fight for survival had only just begun.